ain't fast, call it high speed. I've been working hard, yeah, I've been working nightly. If you think you'll win, not likely. I be taking shots, yeah, cold-blooded, icy. Watching numbers grow is what I call sightseeing. In the front row, run it up when they hype me. The following grows, they know how to ignite me. Call me CEO, I've been running right, see. And I ain't playing games, I create my own lane. Making pleasure out of pain, turning losses into...
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to State of the Steelers. I'm your host, Daniel J. Today, we're talking about the first free agency week that was just happened this past week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Omar Khan has left his fingerprints all over the Pittsburgh Steelers already. I think that there's been the Steelers are kind of making a clear path there as to what their intentions are for this team, especially defensively. Who would have predicted that there would have been a complete overhaul in the middle linebacker position? I know I would not have. You're looking at last season, the main three middle linebackers being Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, and Myles Jack, all three gone from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Enter Cole Holcomb, Elandon Roberts for now. Perhaps maybe somebody else will come in later. Perhaps through the draft. I'm thinking that's probably the direction that the Steelers are going to go with, especially when you're looking at Elandon Roberts. In my opinion, with Elandon, he's a little bit older of a guy. His contract, the details came out. I believe it's a 2-year, $7 million contract. He's a gap filler, in my opinion, and a guy that's going to be a lot less expensive than Myles Jack. So Myles Jack ended up being somebody who didn't perform to the contract that he had. Now, granted, he had a bunch of injuries, and when he was healthy, I felt like he was doing, he did a phenomenal job while healthy. But at the end of the season, he just wasn't on the field as much as you would have wanted him to. There were certain times in certain games where he was just dressing it. Like I said, it had to do with a lot of injuries, but that's been kind of his career towards this latter part. It's been riddled with injury. And so the Steelers, they kind of need somebody there at that middle linebacker position that can hold it down. They haven't had a guy since, Shazier went down. They thought that Devin Bush could be that guy. He kind of flashed a little bit his rookie season. But, ACL goes down with the ACL injury, comes back. It's just not the same. And whether or not maybe taking a year off did something to him psychologically, maybe he just, not being a part of the game fell out of wanting to be a part of the game. Who knows? But he just did not seem there. And now he's a member of the Seattle Seahawks on a 1-year contract, and everybody's gone. Everybody's gone. Let's say hello to a few people in the live chat early. We have Steelers Girl 808. How's it going? Good morning. Lou, how's it going? Good morning. Active again this year in free agency, but using the cap plenty wisely. I agree. Brian Brown, hello, how's it going? So, the first surprise of free agency for me this week was the fact that Cam Sutton signed with the Detroit Lions. He got a pretty good contract there, 3-year, $33 million. I don't think the Steelers were going to be utilizing their cap space for an outside corner that was not a CB1, that guaranteed guy that can lock down half of the field. I don't think that was Cam Sutton for the Pittsburgh Steelers or Cam Sutton in general. I think he's a solid cornerback too, and a guy that is versatile, that can move in the inside and be fantastic in coverage in the slot. And so I thought the Steelers might want to be bringing him back. No, he ends up finding his way off the team, going to Detroit, and congratulations to him. I mean, that's a fantastic contract for him. He got the bag, and he goes into a division that is going to not have Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay more than likely. They're not going to have, the Bears are probably a team that you have Justin Fields. I would say that they can't do any worse than they did last season, but I'm not entirely certain that they're going to jump from worst to first either. And so I think, Minnesota is going to be their their biggest competitor in that division, and we'll see. We'll see. They just Minnesota lost a big piece of their offense in the wide receiver room. I think that Cam Sutton going there, it's a good move for him. It's a good move for the Detroit Lions, and then look forward to his success. Unless they're playing the Steelers, of course. So that was the first big move, and then the Steelers replace Cam Sutton with Patrick Peterson, a guy who is more than likely going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't see why he would not. He's had a long career at the cornerback position. He's been a Pro Bowl, All-Pro player through the majority of his career, and just consistent success there for him. Now, he's up there in age. He's going to be, I believe, 33 by the time that the season starts. He signed a 2-year contract. He stated that he wants to play for at least 2 years. So, I thought that it was a good move. When you compare it to Cam Sutton for the, the short term, I think it's comparable. You look at the contract there. Peterson got 2-year, $14 million. So it's a lot less expensive. And when you look at what they're going to be able to put on tape or put on the field this season, I felt that it's going to be comparable. It's going to be roughly about the same. Peterson's not the fast guy that he once was. However, he's more of a cerebral guy. And this is something that he'll tell you. He had 5 interceptions last year, and those interceptions came not because of his physical ability, but more because of what he was able to see in front of him and see what the receivers were doing and what the offenses were trying to do to them. And so he had a very successful year last year with the Minnesota Vikings. And I find his leadership and his ability to become that cerebral player and have it translate on the field and not be a guy that just solely depended on his physical abilities as those, deteriorate with age. I find value in that because those are things that a young cornerback can learn from. For instance, it kind of looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers might be looking at a cornerback position this year in the draft. I think they're going to be picking one, whether it's at 17 or 32. I do think that one of those picks will be a cornerback. And, I think that if you have a Patrick Peterson in front of you and that you have a guy with the leadership that he has and the knowledge that he has and the willingness that he has to pass that information down. That was one thing that was said about him at his previous places, that he was teaching the other cornerbacks and he was like another coach out there. And so I think that brings a lot of value to the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially if they intend on getting a young cornerback. I think that that's one of the bigger plans. Now, the Steelers were interested in Orlando Brown, the left tackle, while he was a free agent. They ended up not signing him, but what that tells me is that since they didn't, they might be eyeing cornerback with that 32nd pick and going tackle with that 17th pick. Since they did get a cornerback in free agency, but not a tackle at this point. And perhaps even if they do end up getting a tackle, it may not be the tackle that they were wanting, as it indicated, or as we would assume that the tackle that they had on their mind was Orlando Brown, given the fact that that was the information that had came out. I hope that makes sense. And so Brian Brown says Detroit might be the new top team in their division. I agree. They might be. Let's see. What else did the Steelers do? The Steelers signed Nate Herbig. He's a guard. He's got some starting ability underneath his belt. He's a big guy, 6'4", 334 pounds. He seems like he's gonna be like a nasty type of guy on the field. I don't know if you guys saw his press conference, but he's like, yeah, he's a nice guy, but there's a certain way that that football was meant to be played, and he said he likes to play football in that manner. And so I can only assume that means very physical, very nasty, very up in your face type of guard. And I think that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers need. I look for this young man to be challenging Kevin Dotson for that position. I don't think he's going to be challenging James Daniels on the right side. And so I like the signing. I know he doesn't have a lot of experience, but I've gone in and watched a little bit of tape from him. He seems like he moves well. He doesn't give up. He's got a motor. I didn't see a lot of. There was a lot of times in Kevin Dotson's game where he looked a little bit confused. I mean, this was even with Kendrick Green as well. That there was times where I saw their hands go up like I didn't know what I was doing in this situation, and the quarterback is getting pressure. Um, I didn't see that out of him, and so that tells me that he understands his job. He understands what he's supposed to be doing. I look forward to him being in the lineup. Kenny Pickett already reached out to him as well. That tells me, if a starting quarterback is reaching out to you, that he expects you to be in the lineup with him. So I expect him to maybe not be given or handed out the starting position, but be in competition for it. And I wouldn't be very surprised if he ends up winning it. But Brian Brown goes, I think Herbert might be a Steelers fan question. I think so. He seemed very excited to be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm excited to have him there. Last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they replaced the center with Mason Cole, got James Daniels there for the right guard position. I'm sorry. So they're not afraid to attack two positions on the offensive line. I think last season it did ended up working in the Steelers' favor when you compare it to the prior season, especially in the running game towards the latter end of the season. I felt that we saw a little bit of a change there. Now, I think that it would have been perhaps a little bit too much to have replaced the entire line all in one go. But, it kind of does seem like that was the intention here if the Pittsburgh Steelers end up attacking a left tackle early in the draft. I mean, if you look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers had as an offensive line not too long ago, and let's just say they get a new LT there, you might have that new rookie left tackle, Nate Herbig, Mason Cole, James Daniel, and Chooks Okorafor, as Chooks being the only guy that's been a member of the Steelers for more than a season. That's a pretty big turnover, but one that I think is needed. I mean, you look at the seasons prior to last, the Steelers were, I think, back to back at the bottom of the bucket when it comes to rushing yards. The quarterback having limited time to throw, whether it was Ben Roethlisberger or Kenny Pickett. A lot of folks, including myself, really, really harped on this offensive game plan because of the fact that they weren't pushing the ball down the field, whether it was because of the coordinator or newness of the team or the rookie quarterback or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of it also had to do with the offensive line in front of the quarterback, maybe perhaps not allowing the QB time for plays and concepts to develop down the field that took more than a couple of seconds. And so maybe perhaps this is an indication of why the Steelers maybe didn't have that in their repertoire a lot last season. And maybe perhaps with this acquisition and an acquisition of a left tackle, maybe we'll be able to see some of those plays that develop down the field that maybe perhaps take a little bit longer to develop, but are a little bit more imaginative. And so I think it's a good move. I think the Steelers are making, the right moves. When it came to, let's see, I think we talked about the middle linebacker position. We had Spillane. He went to the Las Vegas Raiders, and in comes Cole Holcomb from most recently the Washington Commanders, who's been a starter for majority of his career. Had his season last year and early due to an injury. So this season, going in, there was, we knew they were signing him, but he had to pass physical. So now that he is now signed, we know for a fact that he did pass that physical. But a little bit of some stats to kind of compare the two, Spillane versus Holcomb. This is from their pro day. Spillane is 6'1", 229 pounds that day. Holcomb was 6'1", 231. So about the same height, really not, too different as far as size go. The 40 is where it changes a little bit. Spillane ran a 4.77 as Holcomb ran a 4.48. So he got in the 4.4s. He's a little bit more athletic. I don't see him being the sideline to sideline guy that Shazier was, but maybe more comparable to Devin Bush's speed pre ACL injury. And so the broad jump was 9.2 for Spillane to 11 for Holcomb. 3 cone was 7.13 seconds for Spillane to 6.77 seconds for Holcomb. And in the bench press, Spillane benched 10 times to Holcomb's 22. So it definitely does seem like the Pittsburgh Steelers had a huge upgrade at the middle linebacker position. A guy that's not going to get lost when he's forced to cover running backs, tight ends, or maybe even slot receivers at times. I still wouldn't want this guy out there on a receiver. I know that offenses are going to scheme things up so that that's a possibility. But in those moments, I'd still rather have Holcomb than Spillane. Definitely. But this guy does seem like he has a motor on him, does seem like he can move a little bit quicker or significantly quicker than Spillane. So, like I said, I think this is a huge upgrade. Elaine Roberts, on the other hand, he's an older guy. I think he's a fill gap stop kind of guy. Stopgap kind of guy. I'm sorry. I think the Steelers are going to target a middle linebacker probably somewhere around maybe the 4th. It would probably be where my guess would be. My assumption is right now, if I were to have guessed, I would think that the Steelers are going to go left tackle. I have put it out there so for those that don't know, I'm part of Steel Curtain Network as well. I do their Saturday audio only podcast. In fact, my audio only podcast should be coming out in about an hour or so. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see it. I'll be posting it. So my Twitter is @StateOfSteelers. I'm also their newest host for The Hangover. Brian Anthony Davis is not doing that show. He's still part of Steel Curtain Network, obviously, of course. But I am now doing The Hangover on Mondays. So if you're not a part of Steel Curtain Network, whether it's audio only or on the YouTube show or side, go check them out. I'm on there on Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern. But today I had on that show, I had predicted who I thought that the Steelers were going to go with in the first 2 rounds. I'll let you guys go listen so that you guys can go hear what players they were. But I'll tell you the positions that I felt that the Steelers were going to go with. And to me, I thought they were going to go offensive tackle first, and then they were going to go with the cornerback. But I do and can see them switching it around. I just feel that here recently, you had some brass at a certain location for a certain pro day that makes me feel that I think they're going to go offensive tackle in the first round. Let's see. We have some more guys up here. What's up, Pro Rods? I see right on. Hopefully this season we'll see a difference on the changes. Yeah. Hi, Carlo. What's up? And so, yeah, I think the Steelers, they're moving in the right direction. Last year you had that middle linebacker position was probably the biggest Achilles heel for this defense. I know a lot of people are going to look at the defensive line and up front, and yes, that is true. But the defensive line was dealing with a lot of significant injuries throughout the entire year. I mean, you had first and foremost, you had on the outside, you had T.J. Watt with the pectoral in week 1. You had Cam Hayward, who was dealing with an ankle injury for multiple weeks and groin injury as well. Larry Ogunjobi, who came into the season with an injury to, I believe it was his ankle that he was also had lingering on throughout the entire season, and also got because he was favoring his ankle. He ended up having another leg injury. I think it was another growing as well. And so the guys up front were in and out of the lineup. Tyson Alualu, he really didn't come back to be the player that he was prior to his season-ending injury the prior year. So, those guys up front, I understand where the criticism came. However, I felt that if the offense was doing their part early on in the season, the defense wouldn't have had to have been on the field for the length of time that they were. And a lot of those injuries due to fatigue and overuse would have been negated. And this team would have been even better defensively. However, that wasn't the case. You saw the defense take 100 snaps against Cincinnati in week 1. That was insane. The amount of time that the defense was on the field early on was just horrible. And so I don't anticipate that being the case this year. I anticipate that the offense is going to come in, at the same, continuing at the same trajectory that they finished off last season. And I think that if they end up getting a left tackle, with the acquisition of Nate Herbig, you're going to have an offensive line up front that's not only going to be able to protect not only going to be able to make lanes for Najee Harris, and a running game that was, trending very, very much in an upward trajectory last season. Not only are you going to have that in your arsenal, you're also going to have the ability to pass the ball because you're going to have time to throw the ball. And, I think with a young quarterback like Kenny Pickett and him having confidence in his front offensive line is really definitely going to help out, his decision-making and what he sees down the field and his confidence in what he's able to do if he's not so much under pressure. And so, I feel that this offense is really going to be able to maintain possession of the ball and move in the right direction. And I think, it's evident by the fact that there hasn't been any major, moves there offensively. I know we're talking about, the guard and the tackle, but, the Steelers haven't gone out, got a receiver. There hasn't been any tight ends or anything like that. I think Zach Gentry is the only guy that's still, he's a question mark. He's on free agent. He's still a free agent. He hasn't signed anywhere. But, I think that the Steelers are comfortable with their weapons that they have with the skill position. And I think they know what they have and what direction that they need to go in and where the holes on that ship are. And I think that they're fixing those. And so this defense that even though played fantastic, especially down the line, it did have some holes in the center and the heartbeat of the defense when it came to the middle linebacker position. And I think they were aware of that. And that's why not only were the players released, but even the middle linebackers coach, Jerry O, wasn't re-signed. And so completely redone, 100% makeover when it comes to that, a overhaul. And I think it's going to work out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that, TJ Watt last season came in, however, at the end, for the second half, but he wasn't the same. He wasn't the same TJ Watt. Now that he's had an off season to really heal and train and rehab that pectoral, he's going to come in. I think he's going to be back to form. There's still some moves that need to be made. There still needs to be a third edge rusher to come in. So I know there's a lot of speculation looking at Bud Dupree. I think that that's just solely going to depend on his health. And if he's not signed anytime soon, it's not because the Steelers aren't interested in him. I think it's because the Steelers, I think Bud Dupree understands that he needs to go wherever it is he's going to go, that he needs to show that he's healthy, and he may not be healthy at this time. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bud Dupree signs tomorrow. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bud Dupree don't sign till sometime near the start of training camp, just to make sure that he can get whatever he needs to get done to his knee so that he can be 100% ready to come back when he is ready to rock and roll, or when it's time to get ready to rock and roll in training camp. But if he does come back healthy, and he has some sort of, reflection of what he used to be prior to the ACL injury, I think that he could be a dynamic piece to this defense, because when you look at TJ Watt and you look at Alex Highsmith, these guys take significant time off throughout the game. And a lot of that has to be, just basically fatigue and because they play at such a high uh, at a high rate that unless they're getting constant 3 and outs and the offense is running like 10 to 11 plays, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith each take off about 25% of the snaps. So there's a lot of plays there, a lot of snaps there for a Bud Dupree to come in and not have that huge drop off. Every time TJ Watt came out, Jameer Jones came in, there was a huge drop, or even Malik Reed. When there was times where it was Malik Reed and Jameer Jones both on the on the defense, it was running back can go wherever he wants to go type of drive for the opposition. And so in order for the Pittsburgh Steelers to not have that huge drop off, they need to put in somebody that's going to be able to go in there and perform well. Now, one good thing about Bud Dupree was he was not just a pass rusher, but he also sealed the edge very well. And so you won't see so many big runs against Bud Dupree and on Bud Dupree's side. And so I think that it will be this defense is going to be moving in the right direction. I'm excited about it. I'm super excited. Let's see. Got a couple of questions. JJ52 in the house. How's it going? He said good. He said good improvement so far. Need to stop the run and score more on offense for sure. 100%. I felt that the Steelers offense was able to move the ball between the 20s last season, but getting it into the end zone was definitely the biggest problem there. Utilizing Connor Hayward more, a guy that is, has more reliable hands this upcoming season, I think is going to pick that up. Also, Pat Freiermuth at this, towards the end of the season was also dealing with a leg injury. In fact, not the one that ended up taking him out of the Browns game, the big scare that everybody had, but I believe he had like a knee or an ankle injury earlier that, a couple weeks prior to that. In fact, he went throughout a game where he dressed, but he didn't get a reception at all. And so, and that had to do with the fact that he had an injury to his leg. And so, health is a big thing. If they can come back healthy, I think that the Steelers will be able to do a lot more scoring in the red zone. Bush was totally different after the injury. He looked afraid to get hurt again. I would agree. And then I'll say this when it comes to injury, it can, especially if you've never experienced an injury growing up or, a serious one. I'm not a high performance athlete, but I had my Achilles tendon rupture a couple of years back. I want to say it was about 2 years ago now. And, there are some guys that get this injury and like, I believe it was Terrell Suggs. 6 months later, he's on the field. 6 months after mine, and it had nothing to do with, pain or anything. It was just all mental. I had a lot of problems, even just like hopping. It would terrify me to think about even jumping or doing any of those type of things because, mine was like a complete rupture where the Achilles snapped off the heel, and I think it took a little piece of it and it rolled up my calf. Now it sounds a lot more gruesome than it felt. I didn't feel a thing. I just fell to the ground and I couldn't move my foot. And so that was after that. And like I said, I could jump, I could run, I could do those things. But mentally, I couldn't for a long, long time. And so I had never had any type of injury like that before. And so some people handle it differently, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And if he just couldn't get through it because of whatever, I don't really blame him. Let's see. Hopefully Kenny Pickett is allowed to call audibles this year. I agree. If he wasn't, and there's been that rumors, and I'm not sure if he was or wasn't. But if he wasn't, that's poor coaching. But being able to call audibles and being able to call plays based on what you see is highly important. Like, if not, you're just hoping that you can predict the future when you call play in the huddle, and that's not going to work. Because you can't tell based on who's in the huddle if they're going to be running a zone, if they're going to be running a man, if they're going to be running a blitz. Just by the personnel in the huddle. You have to see the formation in which they're at, the position, where the players are lined up, based on what you see and study in film. You're going to be able to determine based off of tendencies which direction some of these blitzes may or may not be coming from, and you're going to have to adjust based on those things. And you're not going to be able to know that. I guess adjustments on the line and protection can be made, but not being able to change the play based on those other things that I mentioned, it sounds kind of insane, and it doesn't sound like a formula for winning football. And if that ends up being the case, that he wasn't allowed to make those changes or whatnot, or hot routes, which is one thing that I did hear about, was that there were plays sometimes that didn't have any hot routes. I think it was Pat Farmley that said that. That sounds insane. And I'll leave it at that. Brian Brown goes, then some defenses say that they knew what the plays the Steelers were running. Yeah. And Original Rivers is in the building. How's it going, Original? Yeah, there was a couple of, I think that was against Cincinnati in the second time. Yeah. However, Mike Tomlin kind of addressed that after the game. He's like, there were plays that we knew they were running. It just didn't work out the same way. And that there are times that are many more times that the Bengals let me rephrase that. That there are many more times in Steelers versus Bengals games where the Bengals knew what were coming but couldn't do anything about it and weren't bragging about knowing what was coming. And so, I get it. It's a divisional game. These teams know each other very well. I'm not surprised that they knew what each other were doing. This was also the second game of the season, and there was a lot of things that they were saying in regards to the Steelers and a bunch of other things that made me believe that they were saying this because they felt at the time that the Steelers were out of playoff contention and that they wouldn't see them again. I was hoping so dearly that the Steelers would somehow make it back to the playoffs to play the Bengals just to shut them up because of all the crap that they were saying. It's just so unfortunate it didn't happen that way, and things ended up turning out the way they did. But, man, we came close, right? We came close. And I think next step, right? We'll get there. But, yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. And hopefully now, if the Steelers can get that left tackle, they got a guard here, they can add to what they have already. Maybe perhaps they can utilize plays that are a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more complex, take a little bit more time to develop. But all that doesn't matter if you don't let your quarterback adjust or make audibles when he sees something too. So I completely get it. Who knows? I do think that this is, we all know that this is Canada's last year in contract. So unless the Steelers do a complete 180 and are scoring, I would have to say at least 24 points a game for him to keep his job. If the Steelers aren't, I don't think he's going to be the offensive coordinator after this season. And if the Steelers aren't at least above 20 points a game by the bye week, wherever that is, depending on when it is. If it's like week 4, then we probably won't see a change there. But, halfway point of the season, Steelers aren't scoring more than 17, 18 points a game still. I'd expect to see a change pretty quick. Let's see. Brian Brown says, use Najee like the bus. That's a fun offense. Yeah. And, last year towards the end, the second part of the season, once he started getting healthier, once he started running forward, once he started getting building a little bit of chemistry with his offensive line and understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are and where the cutback lanes were, and he stopped running into his lineman's back, dude, the guy started doing pretty good. He started doing really good. He started to flash like the way he was flashing his rookie season. And so I'm excited about it. And also, I think you got to throw in Jalen Warren in there. I think his ability to catch the ball and run after the catch and just make people miss him, his low center of gravity makes him hard to tackle. And so that 1-2 punch between those two guys, it's going to be fun to watch. I think that they're going to make defenses. I think this offense has the capability of making defenses stressed out because you have players in a lot of different positions. So, you know, you have, for instance, you can have a formation where you have Connor Hayward, Jalen Warren, and Najee Harris on the field, and all three of those are very experienced in running with the ball as a halfback. You're going to bring back Calvin Austin, who is also a guy that has experience with ball in his hand that can be shifty, can be a guy that at least in college that is breakaway speed, home run hitter type of guy. On the outside, George Pickens and even Deontay Johnson, who is a fantastic separator. Just got to work on his consistency on catching the ball and having his feet in bounds. But if he can, pick that up and, just be consistent, especially with the routine passes that he catches, that he drops sometimes, if he can clean that up, I think he'll be seen as a very, very good receiver. You have those two guys on the outside, Pat Fryermuth as a tight end. Like you have skill position players here that really stress out a lot of defenses, and it become a situation where it's like pick your poison. Whether it's through the air, you want to double team George and leave Pat and Deontay open. I think that you'll be eaten up all day. You want to double team Deontay, the other two guys will be open. If you want to just throw everybody out there to cover everyone, and Najee Harris will eat on that all day. And so I'm excited for it. I can't wait for this season to start. I'm excited to see what they do. But yeah, it starts off with the coordinator, starts off with the coach, and putting out a game plan that's going to work. We'll see. We'll see. I will say this. Todd Haley, after 2 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers as an offensive coordinator, I think he went 8-8. He had Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Le'Veon Bell in 2013. Defensively, there was still Troy Polamalu, Debo, I believe. There were a lot of the older guys. They were getting old by that point, but you had an offensive team that eventually became a very high-powered, high-potent offense, but stuttered a lot in the beginning, and a lot of people didn't like it, including myself. I'll be the first one to say I was wanting Todd Haley gone, early on. However, everybody hated those screen passes, the bubble screen, the whole nine. Everybody used to complain about his offense. Man, he turned it around. The Killer Bee era was one of the most prolific offenses that the Pittsburgh Steelers had. And so there's a possibility that he can turn it around. I think that we'll see. If he doesn't, I'm all for canning the guy. Let's see. Brian Brown goes, is Benny still a Steeler? Right now he's not. Does he come back? I think if he doesn't see I think that depends. If nobody sees him if he doesn't get an opportunity to compete for a position as a running back and not just a special team ace, I think he'll be back. If he gets that opportunity to compete for an RB2 or RB1 somewhere, then I think he won't be. He won't be. And we have Original River saying some fans giving up on CA3. I don't see why. I mean, he had a foot injury. I get it. it kind of feels a little bit like Sinquez Goldston a little bit, and that's a little bit of the fear. Like, yo, man, you got to get on the field this upcoming year. He's not the biggest guy, but we can't just live in our fears based on what happened then. Let's give the guy an opportunity. Um, by all accounts, it sounded like he was having a pretty good camp up until the point where he got injured. Uh, I think that a lot of these screens and stuff that the Steelers ran with like a Steven Sims and Gunnar O were designed for Calvin Austin type, with the speed that he has. And so let's see. Let's give the kid a chance. Don't forget Sauce Gardner's, I know that's a lot of people have said this before, but Sauce Gardner, guy that was a rookie last year, cornerback for the Jets, who had a pretty good year. Stated that Calvin Austin, I'm sorry, was the hardest receiver that he had covered because of his shiftiness and his ability to cut in and out. And so, don't give up on him yet. Let's see what happens. If you got to go with what you got to go with, and if things happen, then you got to make decisions at that point. I don't think you make a decision. I don't think the Steelers plan for failure, so they're not going to go in there thinking, all right, we're going to have Calvin Austin for this amount of time, and then potentially he's going to go out, so let's hire his backup plan now. I don't think that's the way that they work, but I don't know. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see the speed, man. Let's see what he got. Let's see what he's got. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. I want to say thank you to everybody in the live chat and appreciate every you guys watching me on the live stream. If you're watching this on the replay, thank you as well. If you haven't hit that like button, please do so. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't subscribed, to hit that subscribe button. With that being said, here we go, Steelers. We'll talk next week. We'll do another live Tuesday. Monday, I'm on The Hangover with the Steel Curtain Network. A little bit later, I have an audio-only podcast coming out on the Steel Curtain Network as well. A little bit later today. Monday, Hangover on YouTube. Tuesday, I believe it's on my channel this week. Unofficial Steelers podcast lands here on State of the Steelers. Me and Nate from In Hindsight will be on, talking about anything that breaks and everything that was. So, with that being said, hit that like and subscribe. I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers. See you next week. Peace.